All right, let's get right into a pretty wild story. Today, we're talking about a French engineer, Georges Lakhovsky, and his really remarkable and, yeah, super controversial invention from back in the 1920s. It's called the multi-wave oscillator. The stuff we're looking at today paints this picture of a total game changer in healing that somehow just vanished. I mean, get this. The claims made in these documents are just absolutely staggering. One source says Lakhovsky had a 98% success rate, a 98% success rate in treating what they called fatal cancers over 11 years. That's a number that just makes you stop in your tracks, right? It just demands a closer look. So, this is the big question we're tackling today, isn't it? Was this guy, Georges Lakhovsky, a forgotten genius whose work got buried on purpose? Or is the whole story of the multi-wave oscillator just a really compelling medical myth? You know, one of those stories that sticks around because it's so powerful, but maybe doesn't have the hard science to back it up? We're going to break down the whole story as it's told in these old articles and modern texts. The narrative we're seeing in our source material is, well, it's pretty dramatic. It doesn't just frame the multi-wave oscillator as some lost invention. No, it paints it as this incredibly promising therapy that was deliberately made to disappear right after its inventor died. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of the perspective you'll find in these documents. It sets up this idea of a fundamental conflict, a battle between actual healing and a medical industry that might have a financial reason to keep people sick. This is the lens through which this whole story is often told. Okay, so putting the conspiracy stuff aside for a second, how was this thing supposed to work? It wasn't about drugs or surgery, not at all. The entire idea was built on a theory from physics and biology called resonance. This was a totally radical idea for his time, completely different from the germ theory everyone else was focused on. So let's break down how it was meant to work right down at the cellular level. So, Lakhovsky's big idea, his starting point, was this. Every single cell in your body is basically a tiny little electrical circuit, and it's constantly oscillating or vibrating. It's not just producing its own vibrations, it's also taking in vibrations from the world around it, even from cosmic rays out in space. And this is where it gets really interesting. He saw disease as basically a battle of vibrations. Think about it. Pathogens like bacteria and viruses, they're vibrating at their own frequency. And if their vibrations are strong enough, they can mess with the natural, healthy vibrations of our own cells. And that's what makes us sick. So, how do you help the healthy cells win this vibrational war? Well, that's where resonance comes in. Lakhovsky's whole idea was that you could boost their natural frequency from the outside. The source material gives us a perfect analogy. It's like pushing a kid on a swing. You give a little push at just the right moment, at the right frequency, and the swing goes higher and higher. The multi-wave oscillator was designed to be that push for our cells. Now, before he ever even considered trying this on people, Lakhovsky supposedly did this foundational experiment on plants. Yeah, this geranium experiment is held up in all the literature as the absolute proof that his whole theory was on the right track. The process they describe is incredibly simple. He apparently took 10 geraniums, gave them all cancer. 9 of them he just left alone. But around the 10th one, he put a simple, open-ended copper loop, which he thought would work like an antenna. And the result, according to the story, was just stunning. The 9 untreated plants all died, but the tumors on that one treated plant, they just fell off, and the plant got healthy again. This was presented as the ultimate proof. It is important to say, though, this isn't an experiment you're going to find in the big, peer-reviewed scientific journals of the day. And after this incredible success with plants, the next logical step was people. Lakhovsky started making similar open-ended copper coils for people to wear, around their wrist or their neck. The idea was exactly the same. These coils would just passively channel these good frequencies into the body and energize the cells. And this is where the story takes a sharp, dark turn. It's 1941, Lakhovsky escapes Nazi-occupied France and brings his work to America. It really seemed like he was on the verge of a huge breakthrough, but all that momentum just came to a sudden, tragic stop. So let's just walk through this timeline. He gets to New York, and things start happening fast. Within months, there's a clinical trial with his MWO that's reportedly getting remarkable results. I mean, it must have felt like the culmination of his entire life's work. But right at that peak, in 1942, at 73 years old, he was hit by a limousine, and he died. And this is exactly how the source material frames his death. It's not presented as just a tragic accident, but as a most mysterious event. It makes a point of saying that right after he died, all his equipment was taken out of the hospital and the research just stopped, cold. The text really just leaves that question hanging there. Was it a coincidence? But the story doesn't just end there with his death. Far from it. Even though it vanished from the mainstream, Lakhovsky's work has been kept alive in these sort of underground circles. This modern revival, though, it exists pretty much completely outside of conventional medicine, where, regulatory groups have always warned people against using unproven devices like this for serious health problems. The way people talk about it today has evolved a bit. Now, it's often framed around this idea of cellular voltage. The theory goes that our healthy cells run on a high electrical charge, but as we get older or sicker, that voltage just tanks. So in this modern view, the multi-wave oscillator isn't just boosting a frequency, it's literally recharging the cells, bringing their voltage back up so they can heal. And because of that idea, proponents today say it can help with a whole laundry list of issues, way beyond just cancer. The lists you'll see in these sources have everything on them: arthritis, chronic fatigue, nerve damage, you name it. But the logic underneath is always the same. All these problems come from a lack of cellular energy, and the MWO is supposed to be the thing that brings it back. So in the end, we're left with this really fascinating question. Whether you see this whole thing as a suppressed cure or just an amazing piece of medical folklore, the story of the multi-wave oscillator is this powerful example of how certain ideas, especially the ones that really challenge the way things are, can survive for decades against all odds, kept alive by a small but dedicated group of believers.